Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the July 2022 CRWS experiment. We're going to go over some observations from last month. This is just going to be a very, very small sample of observations from last month. For a review, we're going to go over how this experiment got started. If you want to pause the screen to read this, but the reason this experiment was started was because in my observations, when people were questioning white people to get constructive information, particularly on how to end the system of racism, white supremacy, and replace it with justice, people were getting double speak. So they're getting language responses that pretend to communicate to the non-white person, but it really doesn't answer their question. It doesn't provide them with any constructive information. So for some definitions, double speak is language that pretends to communicate, but really doesn't. Let me hide this. It makes the bad seem good, the negative appear positive, unpleasant appear attractive. So it's shifting responsibility from the person speaking to someone else. So this does not help you solve the problem. And most importantly, it is language that conceals or prevents thought rather than extending it. Thought double speaks, limits thought. So it forces the non-white person in particular not to be able to think. These are the 4 types of doublespeak. Mainly what we encounter is gobbledygook. If you listen to Gus T. Renegade's The Cows broadcast, the phrase buckets of words comes into mind when you think of gobbledygook. You're getting buckets upon buckets of words that do not answer your question. So how to spot double speak? Who is saying what to whom? Under what conditions and circumstances? What is the intention of the person using the double speak, and what are the results? So anyone can use double speak, but this is when we're talking about white people talking to non-white people. When the non-white person is seeking information, is what the white person saying to the non-white person there to help them solve the problem, or is it just to confuse them or avoid solving the problem at all? So the hypothesis, I hypothesize that non-white people, specifically Black people, can reduce the amount of time being misled by, instead of ignoring the doublespeak, address it immediately. Either you directly address it, or you can indirectly address it by redirecting your focus back to the core reason for interacting with that white person. So your reason, your only reason to interact with anyone, particularly white people, but with anyone, is to obtain compensatory constructive help and information, or provide constructive help, particularly when it comes to non-white people. So if you are not meeting with a person in order to have a constructive interaction, then there should be no meeting, no contact, no conflict. So let's get into the experiment. We shorten time being misled by addressing doublespeak immediately and strategically, then redirect to the topic at hand, because doublespeak's job is to get you off focus. How to spot it, who's saying what to whom, under what conditions and circumstances, what is the intention, and what are the results. We're repeating these things on purpose. Remember the 4 wants to ask yourself. I'm going to pause for a second to let you review that. And we went backwards here, and we're going backwards. So how to spot doublespeak. Remember the 4 wants to ask yourself. What do I want to do? Why do I want to do it? How do I plan to do it? And what do I expect the constructive result to be? Before you get into your interaction with anyone, think about this, preferably write it down, record yourself so that you know what you're focusing You're focused on a constructive result. So how are you going to do it? Why are you going to do it? And then you ask the four wants to white people. You can ask these four wants to other people for the same reason you're going to ask yourself these questions. What do you want to do? What is the person you're talking to? What is their goal? Why, how, and what is the result they expect? And don't expect to get straight answers from anyone. So real world observations. So we're in what's called a tragic arrangement, the 3 T's: tacky, trashy, terroristic. So I've organized some of the observations I've seen over the past month. The ones that stood out more into the 3 T categories. So the tacky interactions that I either observed or was involved in, most of them I observed with either white people with each other, white people with non-white people, or myself. So constructive information was being given. I noticed in multiple meetings or multiple interactions that anytime some constructive information was given, it was in a monotone, a very boring tone compared to the first part of the interaction where it was more animated, more, I guess, fun, more laughter, and then we get to the constructive information and it's boring, and I suspect it could be so people will tune out. There was a lot of bragging, showing off of white people and non-white people. Lots of use of metaphors in the constructive information. So instead of clearly stating what was needed to teach the audience whatever was being taught, a lot of metaphors were being used, and we'll go over some of the examples, I believe, in this thing. And of course, your gobbledygook, and then time was wasted on personal information being shared. I noticed this with white people as well as non-white people, which is to be expected. Trashy, inappropriate sexual jokes in the workplace or in business settings, as well as disingenuous praise. Now, this was between 2 different white people. I noticed this a few times over the last month. One of the white people who was not speaking did something very constructive, and they were rewarded for it, which was to be expected. I mean, you did something constructive over and above what was expected, you get rewarded, I guess. But the person who was speaking, even though it sounded like they were congratulating this white person, it sounded like they were kind of not being genuine in their praise. You could tell in the tone of their voice that they were actually quite jealous of this person. So if this is how white people treat each other, why would a non-white person expect to get uh, a different reaction from this type of this particular white person? Why would they expect if they did something constructive and were rewarded? Because there was also a non-white person who was constructive. They went over and above what was expected of them. They got they got recognized and congratulated, and they're supposed to receive an award later on. I personally didn't notice this, but they were mistreated with some, not sexual jokes, but there were some jokes and there was some subtle name calling. I'll go over that in a second. Terroristic, so inflated language with violent undertones. So we had a blast. What is a blast? Usually synonymous with? Explosions. Is that something violent or not? You killed it. I hear that phrase a lot. We're not here to kill anything. In a business setting, you're supposed to be solving problems for the people who are paying you to solve problems. They're not paying you to kill, they're paying you to solve a specific problem so that they're not having to deal with that problem anymore. There was a frequent use of profanity, particularly when addressing non-white people. And then information was sent to a non-white person who was seeking some constructive information, but the information that they received was not of constructive value. It did not address their question. So this is a form of gobbledygook. They were sent videos and audios of things that did not address their question. So some inflated language. This is the definition of inflated language. So something that's really mundane is made to seem more interesting than what it really is. So mediocre things are made to be seen as impressive. So some of the words, now these are nowhere near, but just for the sake of time, these are nowhere near the amount of double speak that I recorded. I just did this so that we're not in here for hours and hours of audio and all of that. So inflated language, amazing, awesome, big day, strong, honor. All of these words in and of themselves are not inflated language. But when it comes to what they were being referred to, they were being referred to things that are very basic that should have been done in the first place. So you expect when rain falls, you know, it'll help out some plants. And we should be grateful for rain and all of that. But to be amazed and you've seen rain, I'm not saying that you shouldn't be amazed, I guess, but if you've seen something that happens over and over, you should not be surprised at the result. It should be expected. You should be grateful for things that are beneficial, but to spend time, significant amounts of time, saying things that are to be expected, things that have not been done, I should say, and they're finally being done for the first time, but they should have been done a long time ago. That to me is not something that should be overly praised. If you need to eat and you've been hungry for 2 days and someone gives you a stale piece of bread and they say that's amazing, that is not amazing. That's inflated language. That's a deception. You should have had some food before the 2 days so that you're not starving and your body's breaking down. Now, unless you're trying to fast, that's one thing, but someone giving you a stale piece of bread instead of some fresh food that provides you with plenty of nutrients, that is the type of language that I'm talking about when I mean inflated language. Euphemisms. So a euphemism in and of itself is not doublespeak. So when you say someone passed away to someone, they lost a close family member or something, you would say, I'm sorry that your family member passed away. That's considering their feelings, being considerate of what state of mind they're in right now. But when you use these type of words to mislead, so when someone passes away and you say something like, we'll go into it. A fly on the wall. These are really more kind of like metaphors. Game changer, new tricks, cleanest city, right here. It's the cleanest city. Do they mean that they've picked up the trash? I hope so. But this cleanest city means there's not a bunch of non-white people in there. The future is bright. think about what that means for a second. Black brothers and sisters, and I heard a white person say this, Black people do not, in this system, per the code book, do not have family members. We're prisoners of this race war. So there can be no siblings, no parents, no aunts, uncles, or any of that. So for a white person to call Black people their brothers and sisters and to mistreat them, that is incorrect. That is deceptive. Jargon as doublespeak. This is a specialized language of a specialized group, and here we're talking about white people who practice racism, white supremacy. So jargon, I put fly on the wall here as well as in the euphemism. Fly on the wall means, you know, you're in the room and you're studying what's going on, but you're not really participating in what's going on. I think this is some type of jargon, especially when it's used from a white person that was speaking to a non-white person. Game changer. What game are we changing? I want you to think about that. Cleanest city, the future is bright, but wait a minute. Now I'm seeing, okay, hold on a second here. Looks like I've duplicated. I meant to put some of these up here. We'll probably have to do an amendment on this and get the correct words up here. But I want you to think about some of the things that are said that don't mean what the person is insinuating they mean. So let's be aware of what's going on. A book that I am currently reviewing is The 48 Laws of Power. I think this is a code book for people who practice racism, white supremacy. White people use these techniques on each other, and they definitely use them on non-white people. Never outshine the master. This means that you should not be seen as a threat because you're more talented, more intelligent than a non-white person. Never put too much trust in friends, learn to use enemies. Who are the enemies of white people? To me, I would think that would be non-white people. And non-white people are used to help support the system of racism, white supremacy. Conceal your intentions. When you're asking a white person who you suspect is practicing racism, and you can't get any information from them, it's because they're hiding something. They don't want you to end the system of racism, white supremacy because they benefit. Do you expect them to tell you? Should you expect them to tell you? No. But I do think you need to observe what they do, not so much what they say, how they respond, and notice how that they interact with other people. And suspect, especially if they know that you're watching them, that they are going to conceal their intentions and that they're always going to say less than necessary. If they're being quiet, there's a reason for that. They're being quiet so that they don't reveal any truth to you. So much depends on reputation. Guard it with your life. Why is reputation? Why would reputation be important to a white person who practices? We're talking about specifically white people who practice white racism, white supremacy. Why would their reputation, why would the way people see them matter to them? I want you to think about that. Court attention at all costs. Why would a white person who practices racism, white supremacy want attention? And why would they not care what type of attention that they get? Remember what doublespeak is. It's a distraction mechanism to keep you from focusing on whatever constructive idea you're focusing on. Get others to do the work for you, but always take the credit. What does that sound like? What does that sound like? How many stories have we heard of Black people who have invented something, but they don't get the credit for it, or they wrote something and they don't get the credit for it. We've seen this with white people. The story that was used as an example in the book was Nikola Tesla. He wasn't interested in fame or money or anything like that, and other people are now taking credit for his ideas. And this has only recently come out. So suggested counteraction. Some of these we've already gone over, but I'm going to focus on the highlighted ones. Compensatory constructive silence. Say nothing until the question you ask is directly answered or the interaction ends. If you asked a question, we're supposed to ask one question at a time and wait for the answer. You can use compensatory constructive silence. This will allow you time to think, and it may also cause the white person that you're speaking to divulge more information. Immediately respond to the doublespeak and repeat your question. Maybe they didn't hear your question the first time. Do white people practice racism? Do they really want to listen to a non-white person? No. They want you to probably get out of the way unless they need you for something. And when they're finished, get out of the way. So shorten your time, immediately respond to the doublespeak, and repeat your question. So you can pause the screen and look over these. I want to note this last one: avoid emotional outburst. We need to be calm and businesslike. We're trying to solve a problem, so treat this like you're working to solve a problem. And your pay is the system of justice. Stay in the question mode. Ask what, why, and how questions. Ask open-ended questions, but ask what, why, and how as it relates to whatever information that you're seeking. And if you can do this during the exchange, that is really good. But always review and evaluate the questions you've asked and the responses you receive. And you're going to use the 4 questions. Question yourself, how can I do better? Maybe another counter-racist scientist, attempted counter-racist scientist, can help you review what was said, what was done, and how you can do better. Go over one question at a time. A suggested reading list, as always: United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept by Neely Fuller Jr., Dr. Francis Cress Welsing's ISIS Papers, and Race Code War, I think, ties in very well with doublespeak. Race Code War is written by Kahari Inaharo. I do not know if he's a doctor or not. That may be a mistake on my part. Doublespeak by William Lutz. The Art of War. Why are we reading The Art of War? This is because this is what white people read. You need to study what white people study or are made to study. The 48 Laws of Power as well. Read those and recognize when they are being used on you. And then use these other books, the code book, ISIS Papers, Race Code War, to help you counter them. And that's all I have. If we have any questions.
I don't have any questions, but very constructive business meeting. I appreciate you adding those terms because it immediately reminded me of Race Code War, like the cleanest cities and brighter future. Those are very cliche, very tired code phrases that we should very much understand. So I will second what you said, folks. Please get your hands on these books that were included, that were mentioned: Race Code War, Neely Fuller Jr.'s book, and the ISIS Papers. Was it? I did have a question. Was it common to hear these same code phrases used by multiple people in the same day?
Yes, and particularly the same person at least 3 times. if not more, from multiple people in the same setting, or the same the same person multiple times. And the what was it? The first one, the euphemisms or the inflated language, those were the ones that I heard repeated the most often, and that's why they were included in the presentation. And I do need to add the jargon that I've heard, but you'll pick up on it as you see it. Reading the first few pages of doublespeak, especially where Dr. Lutz explains the different types, I would suggest reading that first part 2 or 3 times, and also listen to his interview on the cows with Gus T. Renegade. I believe it was done in 2010 in December. Listen to that repeatedly, and that will help you recognize the different types of doublespeak. And a lot of times I want to add, you don't even have to address the doublespeak all the time, because there comes a point where you're just going to recognize it, and you're going to know that they mean the opposite. So all the little things that are just thrown as little pebbles to distract you, you'll recognize it. Just walk over it and get back to your question, or get back to the problem at hand. You don't have to address every single instance of doublespeak. If you came there to get a loaf of bread and they want to talk about their dog, you don't have to address all of that. You can say, oh, that's nice. I need my bread. This is about saving your time and energy. And if you spend too much of it trying to counter everything that's thrown your way, you're going to wear yourself out.
Makes sense.
Peaceful greetings. I found the presentation to be extremely constructive. I don't have too many questions, or I don't think I have any questions really. I was trying to think of a question, but I'm not sure if I can say it properly. My question was, I guess without being too specific, was have you noted, like, can you, I guess, talk about some of the patterns that you've been seeing?
Seeing with white people or non-white people, or just
White people and doublespeak.
when they talk to each other, I've noticed there's a lot of use of metaphors and inflated language. And I also see, particularly when two white people do not like each other, a lot of use of euphemisms. It seems like they're trying to be courteous with each other, but instead of doing what we're told to do, no contact. Some of them do no contact, but if they're forced to be in within proximity of each other, it seems there's a lot of this like the buddy game. That's what I've been meaning to mention. Ever since 0526 showed us the buddy game, where the white child was hitting the black stick figure, saying he's the enemy, but he's being called buddy. I hear a lot of buddy being used between white people or something similar, but you know that these two white people do not like each other. You've seen them get into heated arguments with each other. You've seen or heard them say ugly things about each other, but then they're pretending like they're friends. So a lot of metaphors, a lot of inflated language, a lot of euphemisms, calling them a friend when you know that they're not a friend. And then they use buddy with non-white people. So that even more reminds me, every time I hear that word, buddy, and I've heard that repeatedly between a few different white people. I don't hear non-white people use that term. Why are we calling them buddy and you don't really, I don't know. You don't like the person. You said you don't like them.
That is interesting, especially a buddy. That is a word that I have noticed non-white people do not use, but I have seen numerous white people use that term buddy, and they tend to use it in a very negative fashion, just like you mentioned, and in I guess in a positive fashion, but in most instances that I've observed, it's usually negative. So yes, so thank you.
Yeah. And then there's also the nonverbal things like accidentally dropping the other person's stuff, accidentally spilling something on them. They do this to white people and non-white people. Sabotaging things, taking things off their desk and saying it's a prank, stuff like that.
You mind putting the slides back on that has the jargon? Because the brightest feature, that's a code phrase I want to just discuss. This is honestly quite tragic. But I worked with a fellow victim of racism, black male, and he when describing some students would use the term bright. These students are so bright. I didn't attempt to make any corrections to the incorrect language and whatnot, but I've just noted it. And when I asked about his reading list, he suggested a suspected racist that we have discussed somewhat. But Jordan Peterson, he suggested that's a good person to learn constructive things from. But the brightest future, and using that word bright, light, shining star, all those things that indicate brightness, that's very cliche, and that serves the system, I suspect, in a very profound way, because it just has all of us understanding that white is right, close to lightness, close to whiteness is what we should be striving to be. And what actually is a bright future? It's a future that where racism is still the dominant power structure on the planet. It's an existence where non-white people are still dominated and being trained that everything dark or black is incorrect. So that brightest future is something that we should pay attention to. It's very as I said, I've been saying, very cliched and tired racist jargon. Also, being when I get called brother often in my race camp by people who are not black and maybe are white or not white. I don't know all the time because of all the racial classification confusion the racists have unleashed. But whenever I'm called brother, I correct that immediately, especially if the person is not a black, even if the person is a black person, I correct that immediately because the system does not allow me to have brothers or sisters or any sort of family. So I hate being lied to in that regard, because I know what's been done to us non-white people, especially black people.
Yeah, it's definitely it's like we got to pick which one do we want to address. And I think my next mini experiment is to review how white people mistreat each other and why we should not expect to be correctly treated. And it may help us understand uh, this system a little bit better. Because
Yeah,
I'm
there's
seeing,
a go ahead.
I've been seeing more of the mistreatment of other white people of each other. I'm thinking that may have a clue into how we need to respond with our questions, how we need to phrase our questions. And my next phase of the questioning is focused on my one core question. And my subsequent questions will be based on their response. I'll have to explain why later.
Understood. Greetings to Jola Carter and What's the Code. Jola Carter has a question. He says, what examples of double speak from white people have you recently noticed in the past few weeks?
We'll go through the slides because all of these, the jargon, the euphemisms, these are words that white people said. So I'm picking out specifically the words white people said. These are the ones, particularly this inflated language, I hear repeatedly. So not only just over the past few weeks, I hear them repeatedly from the same person within a span of 10 minutes. So it's the same presentation or conversation or training or whatever. Repeatedly, I'm hearing these words: amazing, awesome. If I hear amazing anymore, I'm going to scream. I'm tired of this word. I'm sick and tired of amazing. Big day, strong, honor. Next, fly on the wall. I heard that one twice. So I basically picked out the ones that I've heard at least twice. Game changer. New tricks. That was said 3 times, but it was said by different people. Cleanest city. I heard that a few times, but not in the same conversation. So it was like a day or two in between. The future is bright. I heard that repeatedly in the same conversations, and Black brothers and sisters was said twice. But this was not a work setting. Some of these are work settings, some of these are trainings that I have to do outside of work, and then some of these are things I overhear. If I hear a white person talking either to a non-white person or another white person, I'm paying attention to how they communicate with each other and comparing it how they communicate with us, non-white people. And then the jargon, I unfortunately repeated this, but I saw them, some of these I saw as both. So we're going to leave it here. But the fly on the wall, some of the words that they use, I feel like they could be used as both jargon and euphemisms. So particularly when they say stuff like the future is bright, or things that kind of sound like it sounds nice, but it's not what it sounds like. It's not really what they want you to think it is. I hope that was answers the question effectively. So literally some of these words, like I heard, like this is through July. So we just ended July. So I literally heard these words last week. So none of this is from August. I'm sure I have heard these words. I know I've heard amazing this month so far. I'm tired of that word. But these are everything that I've recorded from July 1st through the end of July. And then August, we're in August, I have recordings that I have to go through, and I'm going to pick out which ones I've heard repeatedly. And amazing will be on the list for August.
I had another question.
Yes.
I joined a little bit late, but have you defined some of these words like jargon, euphemisms?
Yes. So jargon, when it comes to doublespeak, is a specialized language of a specialized group used to make the simple seem complex.
Okay.
So some of these should not be on here. Like I duplicated the page and in order to make the presentation, and I added some words on here. But some of these I saw as jargon, like something that white people use that's supposed to mean something else, but we don't know, as non-white people, we don't know what that meaning is.
I see. If so, I do like that. I guess it's a comment, and not that anybody asked, but I do like that. I do like that definition. One word I guess I think of would be where I'll ask you where do you think white privilege is on that? Is it jargon, euphemism?
It could be both, but I think that's also jargon because that was made by a white person, wasn't it? Or is that a non-white person? But I mean, does it matter? I see it as a little bit of both. I would say it's more of a euphemism because we're talking about mistreatment. Someone is being mistreated when we use that phrase, or when we hear that phrase used, because we in this room personally don't use this phrase. I would see that more as a euphemism for practicing racism. But I also see it where it could be used as some sort of jargon to say something else. But jargon is really supposed to make it seem more complex than what it is. It's supposed to be more like a big word, I would think.
Okay.
That's kind of confusing because a euphemism is supposed to soften the language.
Okay.
So we're saying when you say white privilege, it just sounds like, oh, I get to go on the yacht, but you don't get to go on the yacht. It's not like we need to go on a yacht. But when they really use it, they use it for things like someone's going to call the police on a non-white person with the intent of getting that non-white person in greater confinement or even possibly killed. That's, to me, is softening the language. You mean to get the person killed. You don't mean I'm white, I get to go on a yacht, you're not white, so you do not get to go on the yacht. That to me is what they wanted to sound like, but what it really means is I can practice mistreatment on you. Great mistreatment.
Yeah, that privilege word, I also see it as a euphemism. It's very, very word that demonstrates the awesome power of racism, just the ability to confuse and obfuscate what's actually happening. You have a long record, probably 1,000-year record of power being held and expanded by white people. We have a long history and record of white people using this power to destroy people, creatures, and large areas of land masses if they needed to. Hiroshima, Nagasaki, But we're gonna wrap all that up into this thing called privilege. Terroristic word. I hate it. And when I say what I mean by hate is reject, I reject the usage of that word.
Yeah, I see what is being said. I understand. I'm kind of in between a little bit. When I think of it as jargon, I feel that that white people use that term to make it seem like racism is complex. Like the issue of white, like, because white people can't tell you who gives them white privilege a lot of times. That's what they continue to tell us and deceive us into believing. So they make it seem more complex. Like if I don't know who who is giving white privilege, therefore I don't know what to do about it. But then I can see how that also goes into a euphemism. So that's interesting. Thank you for your feedback.
And thank you for the question. Yeah, I'm going to leave these definitions up because I think those are very important. Because I'm still, I mean, we've done this for what, 60 days so far? So I'm still kind of learning. There's a lot of words that I hear that I don't know how to categorize them. So which one works best? Go over the definition again and go from there. But the real frustration is the finding, but that's the purpose of the experiment. How do we go through the process of asking questions and not saving time and getting the constructive information that we need? That to me is where the frustration is. I'm asking these questions, but am I asking them to get a result? But what result should I expect? Should I expect to get constructive help? So I think it's important to observe, for us to observe what's going on and immediately go back and review what was said, how people respond, what is their tone of voice, how, if you're in person, how is their posture against you, because you might need to know that so you can either get out of the way or defend yourself. But I haven't experienced that so much. Two, a lot of sabotage things, because I said people mess with things on people's desk. I've had things being taken off my desk. I've had things being manipulated on my desk, which is part of the reason I do not have personal items. I purposefully get things that are specifically designed for the office. So, and most of the things that I take, it's only there when I'm there. So if I leave the office and I can't get anything, I will have my personal belongings, but anything that I buy, so I'm not taking pictures of so-called family members to work, because I've seen other people get stuff like that misplaced. A non-white person had pictures of family members taken off their desk and thrown in the trash. And it took a while for them to get them back. Fortunately, they could find them, but these were pictures of family members from decades ago taken from their desk and thrown in the trash. A non-white person. This person was not black, but they were not white. So what do we need to do to reduce the amount of mistreatment we're experiencing? What do we need to do to stop being confused with all of this language that sounds like it's supposed to help us, but it's really not? And I'm gonna let somebody ask a question because I feel like I'm rambling.
No, thank you, Miss Constructive Action. What you said about the desk sabotage reminds me of the interview we did with the Fair Devils website creator Bland said Diab. Folks should really give that a listen. But we do have a question from Mr. Carter. He asks, in what context is amazing being used by white people?
It's being used for things. That word, I hate it so much. Sometimes I kind of zone out with some of these meetings. So I'm not paying attention, and I know I should be. But there are things when you're in a work setting or you're in like you're going to the store to get something. These are being used to say, I'm trying not to give up too much personal information, but a non-white person has not had the thing that they need in the workplace for several weeks. They needed to get this item, this resource. When they finally got it, that's amazing. Oh, how amazing. The item was somewhere where it could have been easily obtained, but for whatever reason, the non-white person and their direct manager were not able to get access to it despite repeated attempts to get it. They should have had it. So literally, someone could have went into another room and gotten it. Sorry for the metaphor, it wasn't in another room, but this is something that they needed. But it was easily obtained. When they finally got it weeks later, so this means they are going through their workday without this item that they need. When they finally get it, they are told, oh, that's so amazing. Unacceptable. You not having what you need, despite it being easily, relatively speaking, accessible, it's nearby, and someone doing what they were supposed to do weeks ago finally gets it to you, that is not amazing to me. That is mediocre. That is unacceptable. That is gross mistreatment. That tied up a lot of this non-white person's time, that tied up their manager's time repeatedly every day requesting the information. The person who could have gotten it to them was there the entire time and they refused to get it. But you being told it's amazing, that is part of the reason I never want to hear that word again. I'm at the point I'm ready to scream. I don't want to hear that again, particularly in that setting. Does that answer the question?
Shortened time spent being misled. That is something that I've attempted to incorporate more in and speaking with white people, because I've noticed that leaving white people to speak a lot of times, they can reveal a lot of information, but it seems that most white people are dedicated to misleading, deceiving, rambling, not providing constructive information and in an accurate, concise fashion. So I would like to, that is something that I attempt to practice. I don't want it to seem as an interrupting But I think it's important to get constructive information as quickly as possible. So I just had a comment for the shortened time being spent.
Yeah, I think I'm at the point we're going to have to start interrupting. It may be considered rude, excuse yourself, but like the situation before, I'm sure the non-white person encountered a lot of gobbledygook reasons why the person who could help solve the problem refused to, excuse the metaphor because this was not a room that they had to go into, but a few steps, very easy steps could have been taken to resolve this non-white person's problem, and they were not taken. They were being misled. They were given all of these reasons that they could not have been given the item that they needed, the resource that they needed so that they could do their work. So I think interrupting, saying, I think that's where we need to get into question mode and go back. Okay, what do we need to do? Because I encounter that in my work as well. I ask a question, and instead of my question being answered, I get something else. I get they just repeat what they said before, and I understand what they're saying, but they think repeating what they said is going to solve the problem, and it's not. The reason I'm re-asking the question, or maybe I have to rephrase it a different way, is because this might be a different situation where that answer does not apply. So I think I personally have to work on my questions so that we're not only shortening the time being misled, but at the same time acknowledging, hey, you're bombarding me with gobbledygook. I think you don't want to answer my question. Those type of answers, I think if VGQ, if you want to do them, maybe it might work for you. Please share that information if it does. I'm at this point where they look for any reason to have conflict with you and make it look like you're the cause of the conflict. So I want the fine-tuned questions, or at least a codified. I mean, we have Mr. Fuller's code. How do we use it so that we're not wasting our time? We're asking the right question that gets us the answer, where they are forced to give us the answer or forced to be silent, where we know this person cannot help me, this person refuses to help me, maybe I need to find someone else. So that's where I'm at right now. This is just the frustrating part. What questions do we need to be asking to get the information? Do we need to focus on them? Well, yes, we need to focus on them. What do we need to, how do we need to compose these questions? Yes, ask what, why, how, and all of that. How do we figure out how to get the problem solved without having to be bombarded with this gobbledygook? How do we checkmate this?
I think I don't want to describe it as interrupting, but diving for accuracy and clarity from suspected racists is something constructive that we can focus on more. And it is very constructive seeing that effort made by Kwaku and other folks who other attempted counter racists who I've seen doing that. So yeah, I think that's something would save a lot of time and energy, and maybe even diminish some deception and mistreatment that we seem to be experiencing from racists and the spaces that take place sometimes on Twitter.
Yes, for August, I will be adding mistreatment to the list of suggested, what do I call it? Counteractions? Yes. Interrupting, just because we've seen that last night. That did that not save time? It saved a lot of time. We're about to get, I just reviewed the first, 14 minutes of the space that we were in last night. The amount of gobbledygook. The person asks a question that takes 10 seconds, and we're getting 2 to 3 minutes of gobbledygook every time at minimum. And that's just within the first 14 minutes. So when you interrupt, something that should just be a yes or no answer, or just a sentence or two, is being expanded out into 120 5-minute long soliloquies. No. Yes or no. Explain how XYZ happens. It should take 30 seconds tops, not 2 minutes, not 3 minutes. So suggested counteraction, you can add that today. Interrupt the gobbledygook. Literally interrupt the gobbledygook within the first, as soon as you hear it, interrupt and go back to your question, because the goal of the experiment is to shorten time. We're running out of time.
Yeah, I think one other I guess strategy could be using I think, is it close-ended, asking questions that are really yes or no, or even what is it, starting your, but before asking your question, stating, this one is a yes or really a yes or no question, and then so requesting a yes or a no response. Obviously, a racist suspect can do whatever they please, and they don't have to follow your suggestion. But I think requesting that would be effective.
Yes, agreed.
Oh, and also we a great maybe question that will allow us to get an indication. Is this white person going to practice deception, and is this racist going to practice stealing our time and energy with jargon and nonsense? If you ask a racist or a suspected racist, can you please be concise with your answers? Can you please be very simple with your answer? And if they refuse to do that, that could be an example of them deliberately practicing racism. So that's a question I'll attempt to remember, asking suspected racists to be more concise.
Agreed. Because when we're in the spaces, if it's too many people that want to speak, maybe we need to use a timer. Like, you have 30 seconds or 1 minute to answer this question, the timer started. Because I've been in situations where there were too many people, but everybody needed to speak because that was required for the class. So you have X number of minutes to give your response to the question, just because they have too many people in the class and we got to get to everyone today. So I think maybe using timers would help. Like, okay, that's enough. I didn't hear a response to the question. Or maybe stop them within the first 15 seconds.
Agreed. And we still have to be very aware and cautious, because I've seen white people use when I've asked them to be concise, And when talking to a group of white people, they will use that as a way to withhold information. So while asking them to be concise, we have to remind them, hey, this is not you being concise. That's not withholding information. Just everything you say needs to be very, very constructive, and everything you're saying we should be able to use. It should give us further understanding. But that I think it's very rare to get that sort of information from a racist without having to pry it from them.
And I also want to get into another one of the suggested counter items. Avoid emotional outbursts. As we've seen, there are no, at least from the non-white people who are asking questions, everyone had their emotions under their control. You don't want to, as a non-white person, have an emotional outburst. You want the white person, you really want the white person to give you constructive information. But let the white person, if there's going to be an emotional outburst, let it be from the white person. Don't let it be from you. Because that is also going to reveal some very important things about that particular white person. So if you can stay calm, and this is my hypothesis, you staying calm means they don't know how to read you. They're going to try all sorts of tactics to get you to respond emotionally. Now, this is probably for August, but I'm noticing the giving of compliments, or what seem to be compliments. If they give you a compliment, you can say thank you and move on, or you cannot acknowledge it. But the purpose is get back to the reason for the conversation. You have to be laser focused on what it is you want to do, why, how you're doing it, and the result. Stay focused on what you're doing and getting that result. You having an emotional outburst, that's another reason you need to question yourself. What causes you to get emotional? There are white people who know that about you. Why don't you know it about yourself? I think you do, but know what that is and do what it takes to counter that. Understand it and have a response ready. So when someone tries to trigger that with you, you know how to respond without letting it get too emotional. And if it is if it is going to cause you to get emotional, then you can leave the situation, hopefully. But you have to get in control of this, because this emotion is how we are being controlled. There was a video someone shared of Dr. Amos Wilson. If we could have that added into the description of this, I think people need to listen to that. I'm going to listen to that repeatedly. It was the psyche of Black children and how racism, white supremacy has affected our thinking process. We are taught to react emotionally because it's easier to control us. So let us get control of our emotions, be businesslike in our questioning, be calm. Get plenty of rest. Make sure you're well fed. Don't engage in any interaction if you're not able to keep your emotions under control. This is part of the no contact, no conflict. You have to understand yourself first, because white people, even though they say, I'm not an expert, I'm not that smart, they have been programmed before they were born to practice racism, white supremacy. I think we've heard white people say that that's just the way they have to in order to maintain it. So I don't think they have to be aware of the system. They have been taught to practice it by seeing other white people practicing it and being made aware. Just like we are taught to react emotionally because we've seen older non-white people, particularly our so-called parents or siblings or people who are supposed to be in authority over us, who are Black, supposed to be in authority over us, react to things emotionally. This, we have to focus on getting the emotions under control, and I think we can do it. And also the 10 stops with other non-white people. Let's stop the mistreatment of each other. That causes them, white people, to react emotionally, because especially when you have two non-white people who disagree with each other, but they don't do the name calling and the mistreatment of each other. They can have a non-emotional interaction with each other. The white person does not know how to respond to that. Okay, that's going to cause them to want to end the interaction or have an outburst. So please get this. If you don't get anything, get this. Get your emotions under control. Read these books, please. ProduceJustice.com. Get Dr. Francis Cress Welsing's ISIS papers. Get Race Code War. On this very YouTube channel, CRWS, there is a review, I know, of Race Code War and the United Independent Compensatory Code System concept. Has the ISIS papers also? 0526.
Yes, ma'am. We have two studies of the ISIS papers cover to cover, where two different groups went over that text. So if folks don't want to read, folks don't want to acquire the text and read it on their own, we did a cover to cover study, just for that exact scenario, for victims of racism who will like the information but don't yet have the ability to acquire it directly through reading. But maybe they could listen to it on their walks, on their drives, on their way to work, or as they're cooking. You know, maybe they can get the information in their brain computers some way.
Yes, please review those book studies if you can, because I know the code book, only the 1984 edition is available right now. So get the 1984 copy of the book, because it's I find it very constructive. I have both versions, and as soon as the other book gets in stock, I'm probably just going to get more copies. So
And
please
also,
get copies of this book.
Also, Amazon is selling the code book now, so it may be about, if it's not available on Produce Justice, it may be available on Amazon.
Yes.
So no problem getting it from there either. It's just, the important thing is getting the text and studying it and applying it, and hopefully promoting others to do the same.
Yes, and these other books, same thing. I'm sure a lot of the books that are commonly read, someone has done a review. I know there are a couple of interviews with William Lutz on them where he explains the book. They're about an hour long. There's a shortened version. Go to the Internet Archives and look up the cows with Gus T. Renegade. I want to say it was December 2010, with the interview with Gus T. Renegade and William Lutz talking about doublespeak. Same with The Art of War. I'm sure you can find a review, audiobook. You might be able to get the book for free, 48 Laws of Power. Listen to the interview with Robert Greene over the 48 Laws of Power. Miss Helen?
Helen, if you're speaking, you're muted.
Peaceful greetings. Can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Hello? Can I be heard?
Yes,
Helen, if
ma'am.
you're speaking, you're muted.
Uh-oh.
Wait, I heard Helen.
Can I be heard? Can
Yeah.
you hear me now?
We can hear you. And now I just borged you.
Helen, if you're speaking, you're muted.
Okay. Just
It's got an echo. I'm sorry. Let me mute.
so I just want to remind everyone, if you buy the code from Amazon, please give it a review. That helps out the code, but prefer that you get it from producejustice.com. But if you get it from Amazon, please write a review.
Last night there was a study on Program to Kill by David McGowan. I would suggest folks give that a listen. The audiobook is included, so you can also give it a read. Highly constructive and fascinating information. So this allows me to the creators, the universe has just sent me a message. the silence. The racists have taught us that this is called race code war. This is supposed to be called dead air. You know, when there is silence, something very constructive, silence. But that's something to think about. What exactly is dead air? In fact, you need air to not go dead. So how can air be dead? Something to think about. Compensatory silence is it's nothing incorrect about it. Perhaps the Yurugu, the racists, have a incorrect relationship with silence. Perhaps they experience great discomfort with silence and would experience great discomfort if peace, justice was on the planet. Just something to think about. Another text that should be studied, Yurugu by Dr. Marimbani. Excellent piece of counter-racist reading. Will allow one to understand to really what Dr. Marimbani has done is that she's found some of the most intelligent and well studied racists on the planet, and she has compiled and used their words, their laws, their thoughts to allow us to really get an understanding of white behavior. She calls them Europeans, but it's a great study on what it means to be white, how they have compartmentalized themselves and us. It's very fascinating study. Yurugu, quite a thick book. So check out the context of white supremacy book study on it. Check out our book study on it if you can get through the text yourself, or maybe round up some of your associates and you guys could read it together. But Yurugu, excellent book that we should have on our brain computers.
And there is also a book study on this channel as well. I would highly suggest reviewing it. And another constructive question I've been hearing non-white people ask, why did you decide to come to this space, or what was it that they're trying to do? I think we need to get an understanding of what the white person that we're questioning, what their goals are. Don't expect them to be truthful in their answer, but compare what they say to how they react, the verbal and the nonverbal cues during your interaction and even after the interaction. We got to remember the basics of the United Independent Compensatory Code book. We got to remember the 4 basic questions and use those when we're questioning white people.
This is a code phrase, metaphor that just came to mind. I'm sure many of us have probably heard, but it goes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I think that says a lot about the kind of system we are in, because just thinking about area 3 entertainment or people activity, we have a long list of books, television shows, comic books, video games, everything, where it's always a group of people, usually white, who have to go out and defeat dark forces. There's this evil approaching, invading the light, and light is always in jeopardy. And I'm like, why? And in the past, I never thought that, why are these video games, why are these cartoons having the same theme, always having to defend lightness. We got Dying Light, we got Metro Last Light, we got video games where you are the light, referring to Destiny. It's because of just how we had the dragons, the books where the sword, with a knight in shining armor, goes and defeats the dark dragon. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. This is why I see the same stories being told, because in a racist mindset, this system works masterfully. They have perfected training us to think with racist logic. Racist logic being everything black is incorrect, everything white and of light should be protected and worshipped. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's a tired cliche. I'm tired of hearing as well.
Have you heard the phrase? I know I've heard Mr. Fuller say this: drive out the darkness, bring in the light. I've been reversing that phrase.
Yes,
Just
I've
to be
heard.
facetious.
Yeah, I've definitely have rewired my brain computer. I don't, the term enlightening, enlightenment. If I'm doing any N, if I'm using that EN, I say endarkening or endarkenment, because enlightening is code phrase for, hey, I'm brainwashing you to worship white people. I am brainwashing you to support, I'm brain trashing you to support the system, with your thought, speech, and action. You too will want to be a real bright guy. You're gonna think being bright is being smart, and you're gonna think being evil is being dark. You're gonna be okay with saying, with being told, yeah, you have a dark personality, or you make dark jokes, or there's a dark aura about them, so mysterious. This is so whack. And I was once I'm still retarded, but I was even more retarded and confused, because I thought I was a person who had like a dark personality, morbid. I attributed being dark with being morbid, grotesque. But that just goes to show the race has done a wonderful job on me. Gratefully, the creator has allowed me to understand what was done to me somewhat and began to counter it.
Yes, this is why we have to replace this unjust system. Things that we have, resources that we have, light and dark. We have light during the day, darkness during the night. There is a constructive reason for that. There's a reason you plant seeds in the soil where it's dark. They can't grow if they're surrounded by light 24/7. Why? What will happen? What will happen if you expose a seed that you're trying to grow to light for 24 hours a day? Is it going to grow? No. It has to have a period of darkness, just like we have to close our eyes, shut out the darkness so we can sleep and rest. We have things out of balance right now. And that's why we can't get things done in a constructive manner. So we need to get things back in balance. And we have to find out how. We need to use our time and energy on doing those things. So let's get things back in balance. Let's have justice. Balance between people, animals, creatures, and things. And let's stop mistreating people. Let's stop mistreating creatures, living creatures. And let's stop mistreating the resources that we are given on this planet and in this universe. And I'll end there.
Very well put, Miss Constructive Action. Racist logic, really do some thinking about it. It makes absolutely no sense. Its only purpose is to maintain and continue this system. Incredibly vile and incorrect situation we are in, but we will solve this problem.